There is another news article in today's newspaper on Twitter's open source promise. Elon Musk had a long-standing promise of making Twitter's recommendation code as open source. Mr. Musk has tried to make good on that promise. On 1st of April, Twitter made its recommendation code public. You know how it works in Twitter or in any other social media platform. There are two kinds of recommendations. One of the kind of recommendations that you get on the social media platform is according to your subscription. Whomsoever you subscribe, whomsoever you follow, according to the content that they will upload, you'll get updates. But another kind of recommendation is the platform-based. It is based upon the algorithm of the platform that it deems fit that that kind of content should be fed into you. Be based on your history or interest or whatsoever parameter that the platform deem fit. We will not get into the details as to how these two kind of recommendations work in Twitter. They have explained as to how they select 1500 tweets and they keep on filtering it up in order to feed to the user. So the primary logic as to how it operates that has been made known to people by Twitter. But here is a catch. And to highlight that, one can read a recent report by Fortune. There they cite a former Twitter executive who says that open sourcing any algorithm requires its training set to be open sourced as well. Otherwise, the open sourcing of code bereft of the training set will not be an honest one. Just to clarify this point a little bit, suppose Twitter says that it first hunts down 1500 tweets and further keeps on refining as to which are the top 10 tweets that should be fed to the user. So this basic mechanism they have made known that initially they will pick on 1500 tweets. But based on what? The further detail as to how this step and the steps further will be executed, how the system is trained to select these number of datas, that has not been provided. And the real catch is there. If there is any biasness, if there is any tendency inherent in the system to propagate falsehood, that's there. And that training set is not known. But one can say it's a good start and other social media platforms must follow suit. And then we can go ahead in making the training set data also as open source. See, open source software or making a code open source means that the source code of the software or the algorithm is known, meaning you know how it works. You know the basic logic which is applied in the entire process. Open source effectively also means that the source code or the software is now available for use, modification, and distribution. The most popular softwares that you must be using, they all are open sourced. The Android platform is open sourced. They use the Linux program. The Mozilla Firefox search engine that you must be using, VLC media players, they all are open sourced. The Android operating system that uses the language Linux, it is also open sourced. It is Google's operating system. But the Apple's, iPhones, the iOS operating system, they are closed source. And hence it cannot be legally modified or reverse engineered. On one hand, it is difficult to decrypt the messages. It is difficult to do a cyber attack on iPhone because you really not know how it works. It's like a black box for most of the people. But on the other hand, it is less popular. Most of the mobile applications, they are designed for Android because the operating system's source code is known. The coders, the designers, they can make applications more suitable for operating system whose source code is known. Government of India recently has launched Bhar OS, Bharat Operating System. Bharat Operating System also uses Linux, which is the language of the operating system Android. And just like Android, Bharat Operating System is also open sourced. Most of the software, the websites of Government of India, they all are open sourced. IRCTC, SBI, all the websites, they are open sourced. The digital platforms like DigiLocker, Diksha, Arogya Setu, Coven, they all are open sourced. And during the course of our discussion, you will have to understand that's how it should be. GitHub is a platform where open source codes are discussed, developed, they're modified. It provides an ecosystem for developers and coders. It's the leading platform for open source software development. And according to the data of this platform, India ranks third after China and US in terms of number of coders and developers involved in software development. But however, we do not have a programming language of our own. The operating system that Government of India has developed, Bhar OS, uses the programming language Linux. We Indians have not developed our own programming language. So if the software is open sourced, we can read it through, modify it, reuse it, distribute it. It's very convenient. But there are many other advantages of using open source platform or open source software. The most important thing about open source software or open source platform is that it encourages democratization. Otherwise, the digital social space and internet as a whole, they will become monopolies of big tech companies. Open sourcing, free and open source softwares, they are great equalizing force. As I told you, we do not have a programming language of our own, but we are still leading developers. There are many young Indians involved in the process of app development, software development. We are able to do it because the major softwares, they are open sourced. So reading it, understanding how it works, modifying, creating a variant of it, it becomes easy. Also from the side of the service provider, the social media platforms, open sourcing creates transparency. People would better understand how the content is promoted on social media platforms or how the data, including the personal data, they are taken. Because each and everything that the mobile application or the platform will do will be there in the source code. Source code is like the brain. Everything it thinks and does is there in the source code. So if any personal data has to be taken by the application, the instruction for that will be there in the source code. So the source code tells you what exactly the platform or the software or the application does. So it creates transparency. You would know from the knowledge of your polity, transparency is quintessential for accountability. If there are any filter bubbles in the source code, if there is any inherent tendency in the system to spread misinformation or to promote biased promotion of content, that will be made known. The external researchers, the software experts, they can audit the system and assess these aspects. Unless you make the system transparent, accountability cannot be enforced. So the platforms will become more transparent, they will become more accountable. And if there's a need, there could be regulation. If there was such a thing in the source code that would promote biased content promotion, that can be fixed, and the oversight and regulation and further of such a social media companies can be done. Making the source code open will also increase the competition. Suppose a new social media company like Cuckoo, when they understand how Twitter's algorithm work, they may be able to develop a better algorithm or at least at par with them. So the user's experience could be made same or even enhanced. Also the expectations of advertisers, they can be met. All these will increase the competition in the ecosystem of social media platforms or as such for any mobile application or any software. Because it is free to be distributed, altered, modified, open source products are obviously more affordable. The power of hived mind, the power of robust ecosystem for research and for development of improved codes, better software, that can be leveraged only when the source code has been made open. So the new companies, they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They don't have to start the work from the scratch. The development so far would already be known and they can start from there. And things always have been like this. In any area of research, be it physics, chemistry, or in any other philosophy, the work that has been done by humanity, by experts and scientists, is made known to the new entrant. The scientists use the work of peers very freely in their own work. All the great scientists, including Newton, Einstein, they all use the work of the previous scientists who have lived before them. The close sourcing of the code was a new thing actually to us. If you think about it, this is not the case in any area. In any area of research, the researchers make it known to people what kind of theory, what kind of technique is being applied anywhere. So if there is any efficient way of coding, that must also be made known. That must also be made known by extension, so that all of us in a hived manner can work more efficiently for the betterment of humanity. Many are criticizing still the step taken by Elon Musk, saying that he is no philanthropist. He is a hardcore businessman, and the reason why he has made the source code open partially is to resolve the problem of bottleneck of human resource. Only handful of experts can actually design the sophisticated algorithm of platforms like Twitter. So there was a problem of crunch of human resource. Now once the source code is made open, it will be made known to many people and people can research on them and learn from them and new experts can spring up. And that is one of the most important reasons most of the initiatives of Government of India, be it Diksha or DigiLocker or CoWIN or Arogya Setu, they all are open source. They have to be open sourced. Otherwise, who is going to fix things up when problems spring up? When the source code is closed, that effectively means it is known to very few people. So when there is a bug in the function or there is any cyber attack, you must hear that in a few hours the website is back up and running. The bug has been resolved. That happens because the familiarity with the source code is well known. And all these help in the diffusion of new technology, adoption of new technology, making things more compatible. The software and mobile applications compatible with the new handset, new operating system, that is made possible because the knowledge is shared. And when you share the knowledge and develop a robust ecosystem, that will have a spillover effect in overall technological development, like researches on 5G and 6G, researches on new kind of microprocessor technology, AI, Internet of Things, the algorithms of big data analytics. It helps the cause of technological development. It also helps the cause of revenue generation by big tech companies. Google, Amazon, their products are the most popular. And one reason why their products are most popular is because they have made their products, all of them, open sourced. So the compatibility of any new application or any new platform to Google and Amazon is very high. So technological adoption, the consumer acceptance is very high in case of products of Google and Amazon. When you know how source code operates, when it is made transparent, then you can also ensure privacy. Many of the people, when Arogya Setu was launched, they were not installing it on their phone because they were not sure as to what kind of data will be taken. So people were afraid to give their location and whether they are in the places that they are traveling to because the fear was if they go to COVID-prone areas, they can be tracked and can be forcibly quarantined. So for many reasons, there were consternation. But when the source code of a software is made known, you know exactly what it will do. So the privacy concerns, when assessed and audited by experts, can also be laid to rest. This increases trust. This improves the governance structure of the country. The digital public goods and digital public infrastructure, it can be made more responsive. It can be made more accountable by community engagement when the source code of the software being run on the infrastructure is made known. Not only democratization of social media platform or internet will happen, democratization of upcoming technology like AI, machine learning will also happen. When the softwares or the hardwares loaded with the softwares, their source code is made known. COVID-19india.org. It was a platform that was collecting data from all the sources and compiling at one place for COVID-19 cases. Media, experts from academics, government, they all used COVID-19india.org database. Even the Economic Survey of 2020-2021 cited this platform as its source for COVID-19 related analysis. The reason why everybody could use it and the reason why everyone has trust on it, because it was open sourced. Government of India for a while now is moving in the direction of making the softwares of public digital infrastructure open sourced. Government of India has issued a policy on adoption of open source software in 2015. As we already have discussed, most of the digital initiatives, the softwares, the platform used there are open sourced. The website of all major PSUs, IRCTC, LIC, SBI, all of them, they all are open sourced. And under the initiative of Government Tech 3.0, government has started open digital ecosystems. And under open digital ecosystems, open source softwares would be promoted. As you already must have sensed from the discussion so far, open source software is one piece of puzzle in the larger problem of democratization of internet. Open source software ensures that the social media space largely that will not be used as monopolies of few, that will not be used in favor of fews, that will not be used against the interest of many. So it democratizes that space. It democratizes the space of learning over internet. But if you have discussion in your hand, what are the ways and means, or what are the efforts that has already been taken to democratize the internet? What more needs to be done? On discussing the issue of democratization of internet, there are many things that needs to be done. Many already has been done, and open sourcing the softwares, it is one of them. To democratize the space of internet, first of all, you have to make sure that you get internet to everyone. Government has taken many efforts recently in this regard, from laying down the fiber optic cables to the panchayat offices, to the aspiration of ensuring that the 5G services that reaches pan-India. Universal access of internet is also being ensured by effort of private companies. Another company of Elon Musk, Starlink, using satellite-based internet, where the traditional mobile telecommunication infrastructure is not there. At least in important infrastructures like offices and schools and libraries and panchayats, internet can be accessed. Just like rights do not mean anything unless you know how to exercise the rights, internet must be given with digital literacy. Otherwise, it will do more harm than good. One may fall victim of cybercrime. Financial frauds. Usage of internet with digital literacy must also come with data privacy and security. And open sourcing of software to a certain extent ensures this. But cybersecurity architecture as a larger canopy must be present. There's another aspect of democratization of internet that comes with freedom of expression. It must be ensured that censorship exercised by social media platforms and other platforms must be reasonable. It must be within the guidelines given either by them or the government regulation. It must not be at their discretion. Otherwise, rights will not be able to be exercised. There's one another aspect of democratization of internet, net neutrality. It means that all the internet traffic must be treated equally. It must not be the case that I should be able to read the news feed more quickly, smoothly, using less data on Facebook than on Google. Democratization has to be seen at all levels, not just between the big techs and the people, but among the big techs as well. Government of India recently has started the initiative of Open Network for Digital Commerce. Open Network is the extension of open sourcing of the software, where the network protocols, they all will be made known and they has to be the same for the digital commerce companies. This is again to stop cartelization and monopoly. It's just like doing payment through the QR code, as you must be doing through various applications like PhonePe, Google Pay, Paytm, and there are many more applications. With the sender and receiver being the same and the same QR code, you can send the money either through Paytm or PhonePe or Google Pay or other platforms. So the protocol that all the platforms have to follow have to be the same. That's how they are able to read the same QR code and do the same job. So just like that, in the digital commerce space, there would be only one platform, just like the one QR code. And the products that you want to buy there, you have to search there, and the offering of all the platforms will come in the same application. This is how Amazon is selling it, this is how Flipkart is selling it, this is how another local trader is selling it, so that you can compare and take the most wise decision. Similarly, taking another step in this direction of democratization, Government of India also has come up with Bharat operating system. Although it uses the Linux language, it is on the same line of Android operating system, it is on the same line of Android, but it has some added features for security. There is one very crucial piece in the larger puzzle of democratization of internet, that is Web 3.0. You basically understand that Web 1.0 was to read. You can go and surf the internet, read the blog, but you cannot comment. To read and write, that came from Web 2.0. And then the mobile internet access became very popular, and so also became social networking, cloud computing. The most crucial aspect of Web 3.0 would be decentralization of data. Presently, the data that you upload, when you send something on Gmail, it always remains there. You can access that from various devices. The reason is because it's there on one of the servers of Google. So all the data is being hosted by these tech companies. And the way it functions is that they sell it to the buyer. And that's how you keep getting ad on your social media platforms. But Web 3.0 aspires to change things and make the internet use more democratic. How will it do it? The way to do it is to have a decentralized node, so that instead of one server, many servers can be used. Some of the servers could be of government. In a completely decentralized way, it can also be the case that you use your laptops, your computers, your mobile phones and give them as the servers, so that everybody hosts some data, and in a decentralized way, it can be stored and accessed. But the thing is, presently, if government wants something offensive to be removed, it can ask YouTube to remove it and YouTube shall oblige. But here, you do not know which copy of data is stored where. So kind of things will become difficult. So A, there has to be artificial intelligence to not allow the propagation of such data. And B, there has to be blockchain. Because when information are stored in decentralized way, it can only be done with integrity when there is blockchain technology deployed. You must also be aware of non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible tokens means the digitization of anything, music, painting, piece of art, anything. It also has blockchain technology through which you can know the creator of that piece of work. So plagiarism, making money using the content of others, that can be traced. In the last year prelims exam, UPSC has asked this question with reference to Web 3.0. Web 3.0 technology enables people to control their own data. This is what decentralization of internet is about. In Web 3.0 world, there will be blockchain-based social networks. When you decentralize it, to maintain the integrity in the system, to store the information properly, you need to have blockchain. Web 3.0 is operated by users collectively rather than a corporation. That's how democratization is achieved. And to achieve it in a sustainable manner, there has to be blockchain technology, also artificial intelligence. So the statements here all are correct. They also incidentally ask on non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible tokens enable the digital representation of physical assets. Correct? They are unique cryptographic tokens that exist on a blockchain. Whenever you have pieces of information, to hold it in a string, you need blockchain technology so that in the future you know how the information progressed, how the product changed hands. So when you have too many buyers and sellers, one product is being sold again and again. To have that sequence, you need blockchain. But NFTs are not currency tokens. They are not traded. They are not exchanged. It's just the digital form of a piece of art. Trade and exchange will happen of the piece of art. There can be an NFT of a painting, but trade and exchange will happen of the painting, not of the NFT. It is just a digital record. You may find it even more curious that this question also appeared in the same question paper of last year. Consider the following. Which of the above are built on top of open source digital platforms? Arogya Setu, Cowin, DigiLocker, Diksha. Now, after having such a long discussion, you should have no doubt at all that it cannot be the case that any one of them will be built on closed source digital platforms. For the obvious reason that we do not have a programming language of our own, we do not want to have a crunch of human resource. We want to have a more collaborative, participative, innovative environment. We want to fix the bugs quickly, and we want to integrate our applications in popular operating system like Android, increase the transparency, accountability, and trust in the applications. So all of them will have to be open sourced. All these questions are pointing in one direction. And the direction is this way. There is a news article in today's The Hindu. PM Modi calls for integrated response to disaster. The news is in the context of the 5th International Conference on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. This conference on disaster resilient infrastructure is part of the initiative of Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. You must already know about this body, extremely important because this is India-led initiative. It's a global partnership involving governments, private institutions, United Nations bodies and other global bodies to promote development of disaster resilient infrastructure, physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure and social infrastructure. Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure is an India-led initiative and it was launched by Prime Minister Modi at the United Nations Climate Action Summit in 2019. It has a collaborative approach towards development of disaster resilient infrastructure involving government from all parts of the world, private institutions and global bodies like UNDP, United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, World Bank, Global Infrastructure Hub. The goal is to collaboratively promote infrastructure resilience and support the implementation of Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Till the time of last summit, 31 countries were part of this coalition. And by now, over 40 countries in just few years of its foundation from all over the world have become part of CDRI. There are 4 major initiatives, 2 of which will take up later in the discussion of CDRI. One is Knowledge Management Portal. It's very important that the local knowledge from all over the world be intelligently used for disaster resilience. Biennial report on global infrastructure resilience is first of its kind, published by CDRI. Infrastructure for Resilient Island State Initiative. This is a major initiative of CDRI launched last year. And later in our discussion, we shall also talk about Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator Fund. This is a brief about Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure. This is a brief on CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. It's an India-led initiative, hence becomes extremely important. In 2005, India launched International Solar Alliance, and just the next year prelims it was asked. Since CDRI is also an India-led initiative, you have to pay due attention to what is being discussed in the summits because questions definitely will be asked from here. The summit was to be conducted on 4th and 5th of April, so the summit also continues today as the video is being recorded. So the detailed outcome will come in the newspaper tomorrow. But howsoever, yesterday on the first day of the summit, Prime Minister has said quite few things. Prime Minister has said few things, and that shall become the basis of our discussion now. He has said that infrastructure is not only about returns, but also about reach and resilience. This we have covered in the DNS many a times, the significance of infrastructure, what return it gives to economy and also to society. But infrastructure is not only about return, it is also about reach and resilience. Prime Minister has stressed the need of a holistic view of infrastructure, not only physical, but also social and digital infrastructure. Now, these are the three things that we are going to take up in the discussion. Prime Minister has also stressed on the need of intelligent use of local knowledge of building infrastructures that can withstand disaster. Or to say, the intelligent use of local knowledge to develop resilient infrastructure. And resilience can be greatly enhanced when modern technology is used along with the local insights. Prime Minister also has said that commitment of financial resources is key to the success of infrastructure resilient initiatives. So there are three things that we are going to take up one by one. First, the local knowledge in developing infrastructure resilience. Second, modern technology. And third, the financial resources. You might be aware that in 2001, a disastrous earthquake struck the state of Gujarat. The devastation spanned several districts of the state, especially the Kutch district. And many villages in the Kutch district were grounded. However, one village named Bhachau, it was relatively unharmed. This was because the village had continued to use the traditional housing designs and construction techniques that had proven to withstand seismic events over centuries. Let's talk about some of the key aspects of this traditional seismic design to make the infrastructure, the houses, resilient in the village of Bhachau. There they made houses primarily from the materials locally and readily available like stone, lime, wood, bamboo. And these local materials, they are more flexible and earthquake resistant than concrete. They had very simple and symmetrical square plans. Plan means the base, the foundation of the house. They didn't have any complicated shapes, simple square-shaped symmetrical plans. This made the structure more balanced and stable during the ground shaking. The houses were kept low-rise, usually 1 to 2 story high. Shorter heights minimize the risk of collapse. The walls were made thick, up to 2 feet in width. The broad base provided more stability. And the locally available raw materials like limestone and wood, they were used for wall construction. A traditional design used in the construction of the wall having wooden bands. This is like a lost knowledge for many of the villages in Kutch. But Bhachau held on with it. To hold the stone walls together, wooden bands were placed at regular intervals, both vertically and horizontally. And this kind of confinement of stone within the wood made the structure more intact, more resilient during the tremors of earthquake. They had sloping roofs. The sloping roofs, up to around 50 degrees, they not only reduce load on the building, but they allow for quicker drainage of rainwater that could otherwise weaken the walls. Just like walls, they also had flexible flooring made up of timber and bamboo mats. They are preferred because rigid concrete floors, they cannot absorb shocks during the tremors of earthquake. The design of the houses invariably had more than one exit and entry to prepare for the scenario of collapse of the house. The villages were smart and disciplined for regular maintenance of the infrastructure. They had various traditional materials for repair and various techniques to properly maintain the houses to ensure maximum resilience. And this knowledge was passed down through generations. This case study of Bachao shows how using time-tested traditional knowledge of design and construction helped the people of Bachao develop disaster-resilient infrastructure that stood strong when surrounding areas were destroyed. The simple symmetry, natural materials, and practical wisdom behind these structures prove that local knowledge can bring highly effective solutions. And when you combine the local knowledge with technology, then huge resilience against disaster can be achieved. But before we move on to the technological aspect, I would just like to highlight other traditional disaster resilient designs in other parts of the world. For instance, after the devastating earthquake in Nepal in 2015, local builders and engineers worked together to develop earthquake-resistant building techniques. How? Using the local materials such as bamboo, mud, stones, limestones. These traditional building techniques, they are passed down from generation to generation, but somehow the absorption of modernity, use of concrete, which is a misfit in that terrain, a misfit for that geology, they reduces the resilience of the building. But Nepal learned a lesson in 2015, and many of the construction works, especially in the vulnerable areas, that is being done as per the traditional design knowledge. And the same is in the case of Peru. Peru is located on the Pacific Ring of Fire and is prone to earthquake. The local communities in Peru, they also have developed traditional building techniques which can better withstand earthquakes. Bangladesh is a low-lying country that is prone to cyclones and floods. Local communities in Bangladesh have developed traditional housing designs. They make domed huts made up of bamboo and thatches, and because of the shape of the huts, they are able to withstand high winds and heavy rainfall better. Japan is one of the most earthquake-prone countries in the world, and its coastal regions are also at the risk of tsunamis. And hence, communities in Japan, they have developed traditional building techniques that incorporate features like reinforced concrete. They have breakaway walls. They have invariably elevated foundations to resist the impact of tsunamis. Mudslide is very common in Colombia, and they have developed their own techniques making them less vulnerable to mudslides. And the community infrastructure like water system, that is also better managed using local traditional knowledge. For instance, in case of Rajasthan, you know that the local communities in Rajasthan, they have developed traditional water management systems such as step wells and reservoirs that capture and store rainwater using the monsoon season. And they're also built and designed in a way that the groundwater recharge is more effective. Indonesia is a country that is prone to wildfires during the dry season. So people there in Indonesia, they have developed traditional forest management practices. They practice controlled burning. They clear a narrow patch of forest near the locality, and that help to prevent the spread of wildfires. So we are done with one of the three things that we aspire to discuss: intelligent use of local knowledge for building infrastructure resilience. And if modern technology gets combined with local insights, then we can achieve greater resilience. For instance, we start using satellite drones and GPS for damage assessment. Satellite-based mapping, environment sensors, and even drones, they were used for the first time during the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011. They also made use of robots in disaster response. Drones were used to map the radiation level. Satellite-based images were used to map the thermal distribution, the thermal profile of the region. In the next couple of years, drones were used in much advanced manner during the forest fires in California. It was used not only to map the forest fire, but also to drop the fire retardants. Drones also had real-time heat sensors. The thermal mapping helped the firefighters to strategically coordinate their efforts. Based upon the emerging technologies of satellite mapping, the sensors, and the IT-based communication, early warning systems are being developed. And back in 2004, if you might have heard about it, There was a huge tsunami in the Indian Ocean. It caused widespread devastation in the Indian Ocean rim countries like Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, and other countries. In response to this, Indian government implemented an early warning system using a very basic technique of using buoys. They were equipments to be buoyant on the water, but they could detect seismic activity in the ocean by the waves, by the early waves arriving on the surface. And the system would then send early alert to the coastal communities for an impending tsunami. Another very potent tool in the digital infrastructure for resilience development are the mobile apps and the crowdsourcing of information through the mobile apps. In 2010, where the mobile phones were still at the early stage of development and so was the social networks, in the Haiti earthquake incident, it was the first time that crowdsourcing of information was used at large scale through mobile-based technology. People made use of social media to get connected, to share information, using which the relief operation could be better coordinated. More recently, during the bushfire of Australia in 2020, about which you must remember, many of the states in Australia, like New South Wales, it's a southeastern state in Australia, it used crowdsourcing to map the damage. The state used an app called as Virtual Emergency Dashboard. It allowed people to report road closures, property damage, and reporting the location of some stressed people or wild animals. It helped a lot in overall coordination of the disaster relief operation. And the extension of this you must also have read in the context of the Kerala floods. And we all are aware of the extensive use of mobile applications to decimate COVID-19 alerts. But beyond the mobile applications, crowdsourcing of information through social media platforms or otherwise, more intensively now technology is being used to develop disaster resilience. For example, now we are coming up with AI-based predictive models and warning systems. AI models that analyze huge amount of data on weather patterns, seismic activities, etc. They can help in early predictions and warning of impending disasters. Advanced warning or early warning system, they are a big part of developing resilience against disaster. It allows people to evacuate and take precautions to reduce the loss of life and property. Japanese researchers, they have developed an artificial intelligence system that uses satellite data to predict landslides. They take various parameters into consideration like soil moisture, anthropogenic pressures, topography of the identified area. Back home, you must have read about Flood AI. It's an AI-powered flood prediction system in the city of Chennai. It has machine learning-based algorithms to predict the likelihood and severity of flooding in different areas of the city. It takes into consideration parameters like rainfall pattern, data given out by the water level sensors, and the historical flood data temporally and spatially. So artificial intelligence, using of course machine learning and also big data analytics, they can be used to predict the timing and intensity of disaster. Other technologies like renewable energy microgrids, they also make the infrastructure more disaster resilient. The renewable energy microgrids, solar, wind, or mix of both, they can provide resilient power backup during disasters. Because they are microgrids, they're easy to be reinstalled after disaster. They work in a decentralized manner. So the energy distribution is less impacted by infrastructure failure during disaster. Because if you take the energy from one main grid, you're totally dependent on the main line. The renewable energy microgrids, they work in a decentralized manner. Smaller infrastructure, easy to reinstall. The same is the case with satellite-based internet. Since there is no infrastructure on Earth, there's one satellite up in the air and there's one receiver. The performance of satellite-based internet will obviously be affected during cyclone because moisture hinders the performance of satellite-based internet more than the terrestrial internet service. But the service can be restored immediately after the disaster. 3D printers can be used to print essential supplies like food, medicine, or any tools that can be used in disaster-hit remote areas where conventional supply chains are disrupted. The digital files for the 3D printing can be delivered via mobile network and it can be printed on demand in situ. Field Ready, it's an organization that works extensively in using 3D printers for disaster resilience or post-disaster operation. One fine example of this is that prosthetic limbs, they were created using 3D printers. and they were distributed to the survivors of 2015 Nepal earthquake. And the printed limbs were low cost, water resistant, and customized. Similarly, in 2017, there was a very devastating hurricane, Hurricane Maria. Being a small country, Puerto Rico really needed help. And the same organization, Field Ready, used 3D printing to create essential supplies like water filtration systems, many of the medical equipments, and even parts of infrastructure like bridges and electric poles. The state of Odisha is now using the concept of smart shelters. Smart shelters are kind of mobile shelters deployed with the latest state-of-the-art technology like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, thermal sensors, 3D printers, etc. So they can monitor the health of people seeking refuge. It can also provide emergency alert in the nearby area. And it can also help in the communication system if the main mobile-based communication is disrupted. So these are some of the examples to show that modern technology can enhance our disaster resilience. So we have done 2 out of the 3. We have seen how local knowledge can be used intelligently and also modern technology for disaster resilience. Now we have to go to the third one. Commitment of financial resources is key to the success of initiatives. We have seen earlier 4 initiatives of CDRI. 2 of them are very prominent. One is Infrastructure for Resilient Island State Initiative. It was jointly launched at the World Leaders Summit at COP26 in 2021 at Glasgow in UK. It was launched by the Prime Ministers of India, UK, Australia, Fiji, Jamaica, and Mauritius. It's a dedicated initiative to provide support to small island developing states. The second initiative of CDRI is Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator Fund. See, we have talked about the infrastructural design using the traditional knowledge. We have talked about technology. All of these will require money, especially using modern technology to enhance disaster resilience. With that in mind, and also considering the increased intensity and the frequency of major global disasters, CDRI announced Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator Fund with a corpus of 50 million USD. It's a kind of trust fund to support global action on disaster resilience of infrastructures. It was launched in 2022 at COP27, which was held in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. You have to remember this because that's the way UPSC asked. Look at this statement. The International Solar Alliance was launched at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in 2015. So you have to know that Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator Fund was launched in November 22 at COP27, which was held in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. United Nations Development Programme and United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, they supported the establishment of IRAF. But it is managed by United Nations Multi-Partner Trust Fund Office. You have to remember this. The fund is largely supported in terms of financial contribution by India, United Kingdom, Australia, and also European Union. With regard to the discussion in this section, you already know one of the funds that exists for disaster resilience. You also have to be aware of some of the other funds that exist for disaster resilience. For example, Green Climate Fund. It was established under the aegis of UNFCCC as a financial mechanism to assist developing countries in adopting and mitigating practices. To assist the developing countries in adoption and mitigation of practices to counter climate change. It has a pledged amount of $100 billion per year, but that's the pledged amount. There's one very important fund managed by the World Bank, Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery. World Bank so far has allocated over $250 million for the disaster resilience programs. UN Disaster Resilience Foundation. It was set up by the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. There is an adaptation fund established under the Kyoto Protocol. It finances concrete adaptation projects and programs in developing countries. The programs that include not only funding of climate resilience, but also disaster risk management. Global Risk Financing Facility. It's a multi-donor trust, but it is managed and hosted by World Bank. And you must also know about Climate Investment Funds. It was established in 2008 at the request of G8 and then G20. But however, having climate funds is one thing And effectively implementing climate financing is another thing. You know that the Green Climate Fund has a pledged amount of $100 billion, but it's not easy for that amount of money to keep coming year on year. UPSC in 2016 has asked why there is gap between MOUs signed and actual FDIs. When countries sign MOUs for FDIs, there's a mutual interest. Although discussion is related with FDI, but it discusses an issue that touches upon what we have discussed. The money which is pledged by the side of developing countries, there remains a gap in the final amount that actually materializes. This question is in terms of FDI, but you have to prepare an answer in terms of climate financing or disaster resilience financing. We have largely discussed three areas: how local knowledge, modern technology, and financial resources can effectively increase the disaster resilience. But I haven't discussed one thing told to us by the Prime Minister that you will do yourself. And show me that you have some zeal in you by putting some of the pointers in the comment section. That point is this: social and digital infrastructure are as important as transport infrastructure. Digital infrastructure, some of them we have already covered in the part of modern technology. But social infrastructure is completely untouched. Using some examples, case studies, some of the arguments, you justify the statement that social infrastructure are as important as transport infrastructure. There is an article in today's The Hindu: more women judges at district courts than in high courts. Let's have a little elaborate discussion concerning women in judiciary in India.
Supreme Court has only 2 women judges out of the total sanction strength of 34. And there has never been a female Chief Justice of India. In the High Courts, there are presently only 80 women judges out of 1113 judges in all the High Courts. This comes to about 7.2%, which is too less. Attorney General also highlighted that there are presently 6 High Courts where there are no sitting women judges. These High Courts include Manipur, Meghalaya, Patna, Tripura, Telangana and Uttarakhand. If you go one step back from here, you will understand the problem lies in the skewed ratio in the senior lawyers, because they are appointed as High Court judges and from there they come to Supreme Court. The number of senior lawyers that is skewed towards men. The same goes for number in the bar councils. There has never been a female chairperson or vice chairperson of any of the 12 bar councils that we have. Then there are very few females who are heading the law firms. This is about going down the ladder. If you go back in time, the situation was even worse. After independence, it took us 4 decades to appoint the first woman judge in the Supreme Court. Justice Fatma Bibi was the first female judge of Supreme Court of India. So definitely there is problem of skewed sex ratio in our judiciary. It needs to be corrected. It's very important to have good number of female judges in the higher judiciary, because judiciary serves the society. And if you're serving a society, if you're representing the society, that body has to be representative of the society. Otherwise, there will be no legitimacy. It is for the legitimacy of judiciary that women must be present in adequate numbers, ideally in the same ratio as there is ratio in the society. That is a body representing the society. Only then the jurisprudence in India would be more inclusive, equal and just. On various matters, it is important that the judiciary acts in a gender-sensitive manner. Judiciary must be bias-free. Various empirical studies have shown that even if there is 1 woman judge on a 3-judge panel or a 5-judge panel, the entire panel's decision-making in gender discrimination cases gets influenced. Many legal luminaries are of the opinion if the Supreme Court had 1 woman judge on the bench when the judgment against the Misuse of Dowry Prohibition Act was given, the judgment could have been very different. Then there are administrative reasons why women judges must be present in the court. Women litigants will feel more comfortable. They'll feel less intimidated in presence of female judges, especially in cases of sexual harassment. The judgment can also be more empathetic in case of sexual violence cases. So definitely there is great importance of having good number of women judges in India. And we already have seen that that is not the case. So the discussion from here can only go in one direction. What can be done to increase the women percentage in judiciary in India? In order to get to the solution, we have to get to the core of the problem first. You need to identify what are the reasons that are keeping women away from higher judiciary. Is it because of lack of systemic support? Is it because of lack of will of women? It is not the career choice in general, or there are other reasons. First of all, historically, women were not allowed to practice law in India. It was not male dominated, but it was male exclusive. The law forbade women from taking up law as profession. In early 1920s, this law was done away with by Allahabad High Court. And then Miss Cornelia Sorabji, she became the first woman advocate in India. She was not only the first woman advocate in India, she was also the first female graduate from Bombay High Court, and she was also the first woman to study law at the Oxford University. She was a social reformer and she did tremendous work in uplifting women in India. So historically, women did not have privilege to practice law in India, and the effect of that continues to be seen even today. Although the number of women have increased, but they are not matching with the percentage of male in the profession. And only very recently, large number of women are taking up to study law in India. But still, even in law school, if you look at the sex ratio, it is skewed towards male. Then the profession of law is such that women inherently face lots of problem in practicing the profession. There are various reasons for that, and even the litigants are biased towards women lawyers, and they prefer mostly male lawyers with whom they can socialize better and discuss their cases better. And if you're looking at the problem of a skewed sex ratio in higher judiciary, if you go down the ladder, you will understand that there are problems with skewed sex ratio in legal practitioners. There are skewed sex ratio in law graduates. There are skewed sex ratio in the bar council. And there is also skewed sex ratio in lower judiciary. But the condition is not so poor. As you go from Supreme Court to lower judiciary, the sex ratio increases. So here is a critical question for you. We understand that the sex ratio in higher judiciary is poor, but what is the reason for that? Because solution to a problem will come from understanding the cause. If there is discrimination in the appointment, then there is a need for reservation, some affirmative action. But if law is not a popular career choice among women, then there is no need for reservation. There are other ways to increase the women practitioners. Because we know that the sex ratio in law colleges are also poor. So it could be the case that it is not a career choice for women. If that is the case, then there is no need for reservation. But if you see in your analysis that there is discrimination, then there is a need for reservation. So if a question is posed to you, should reservation be given in higher judiciary? Your answer would depend on your understanding of cause of lower number of women in higher judiciary. See, there are two things. It is true that lower percentage of women are law graduates. But it is also true that the percentage of female judges in lower judiciary is higher than higher judiciary. So there seems to be a case of gender discrimination. Collegium recommending names for higher judiciary have recommended very few female names. Now you cannot argue against this that there is no discrimination because women are of equal capacity as men. If the names for the higher judiciary from lower judiciary is coming more in favor of male, then there is a case of discrimination. Then there seems to be violation of right to equality under Article 14 and Article 15. Under Article 15(3), the state has the power to make special provision for women and children. And using this power, the state can make reservation for women in higher judiciary. India is also signatory to Conventions on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women 1979. And this convention envisaged removal of obstacles of women's public participation in all spheres of public and private lives. Entering into higher judiciary is a very important form of public participation. So as such, India is also obliged to remove this administrative difficulty of appointing women in higher judiciary. With these arguments, you can end up saying that yes, there should be reservation for women in higher judiciary. Or you can give an opposite answer You can see the cause for lower number of women in higher judiciary as to be completely different. You can say that there are less number of women practicing law in India. There is nothing in the law to stop women from entering judiciary and become senior lawyers and judges. The number of senior lawyers in India are skewed towards male. Here there is no question of appointment, there is no role of collegium. As we have talked about, there are less number of women entering the law college, so it has to do with the interest of women in taking law as a career. And the examination for lower judiciary happens on a competitive open examination basis where there is no discrimination. The problem comes here when you go from lower judiciary to higher judiciary. And there are twin problems. One is a constitutional question. If executive and legislature start interfering in the matter of appointment, that can be seen as impinging on the independence of judiciary. So without disturbing the power balance among the organs of the state, what can be done is a regulatory and administrative reform from within the collegium. The initiation of which can be seen in the introspection of Supreme Court, giving invitation to the Attorney General and discussing the issue of making judges more gender sensitive. Although certain states like Bihar and other states, they do give women reservation in the matter of employment and public services, but central government so far has not given reservation to women in any all India services. So giving reservation to women for appointment in higher judiciary will go against the set norms. I have given you arguments on both the sides. You have to be aware of them, and if a question comes, you have to write both. But in conclusion, it completely depends on you what you choose, whether to give reservation or not.